So imagine walking into your local public library, right? You head straight toward the reference section, but before you can even pull a book off the shelf, a security guard steps right in front of you.
Right, and they demand your government-issued passport.
Exactly. Your passport, and they insist on doing a live retinal scan right there on the spot.
And, I mean, if you refuse, or if that passport happens to be from the wrong country,
Yeah.
the doors just lock. You don't get to read.
Yeah, the information is simply walled off.
Mm.
And that is exactly the reality hitting the technology sector this week.
It really is.
Because for the longest time, interacting with AI felt incredibly lightweight. It was this almost magical software experiment, just living quietly inside a browser tab. You typed in a prompt, you got a recipe, and it felt totally frictionless.
It's just a completely open sandbox.
Right. But that sandbox era is officially dead. We are now staring down the barrel of heavy industry, billion-dollar corporate power grids, and really rigorous national security checkpoints just to get to a prompt box.
Which is a massive pivot.
It is. So welcome to today's deep dive. We are unpacking a phenomenal stack of notes today from the Tech Reader AI Digest by Aaron Rose. This is dated April 21st, 2026.
And this specific digest, I mean, it really captures the exact moment the industry fundamentally shifts. We aren't just talking about software updates anymore.
No, not at all.
We're looking at the actual physical and economic restructuring of the global internet.
And that is the mission for our deep dive today. Breaking down how this technology is growing up, and more importantly, what the mechanics of that growth mean for you. The user sitting at your keyboard.
Because it changes everything for the user.
Absolutely. Because before any company can build a global ad network or secure a platform, they need raw, earth-shaking physical power. So, okay, let's unpack this. Amazon is investing up to $25 billion into Anthropic.
Right, and they are dropping $5 billion immediately.
Right away.
Yeah.
And then unlocking up to $20 billion more based on these commercial milestones. So that brings Amazon's total potential commitment to a staggering $33 billion.
And, I mean, the cash infusion is obviously massive, but the commitment flowing in the opposite direction is the actual tectonic shift here.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Well, in return for that investment, Anthropic has committed to spending more than $100 billion on Amazon Web Services on AWS technologies over the next 10 years.
$100 billion. Over a decade. I mean, just to put that scale into perspective for you guys listening, think of Anthropic as a rapidly expanding metropolitan city.
Okay, yeah.
For the past couple of years, they've basically been renting industrial diesel generators just to keep the streetlights on as the population boomed.
Which works for a while, but...
Right, but they've hit a wall. They can't just rent their way to the future anymore. They have to partner with a massive utility company to build a dedicated city-sized nuclear power plant simply to ensure the grid doesn't collapse.
That's a great way to put it. This isn't just a software partnership. It is a 10-year physical lock-in.
Yeah.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this $100 billion lock-in is really about securing up to 5 gigawatts of compute capacity.
Wait, 5 gigawatts. Let's just pause on that number for a second.
Right.
Because 5 gigawatts is an unfathomable amount of power. I mean, it's enough electricity to power roughly 3.5 to 4 million homes.
Yeah, it's wild. Anthropic isn't just buying cloud space anymore. They are essentially commandeering the energy output of multiple nuclear reactors just to train and run their models.
Just for the AI.
Right. And they aren't running this on standard hardware either. They are securing this capacity across Amazon's custom silicon. So we're talking the Trainium 2, the Trainium 3, and the unreleased Trainium 4 chips.
Yeah, and the technical specs on that unreleased Trainium 4 chip, that caught my eye immediately in the digest. Amazon is claiming it will deliver 2 exaflops of FP4 performance.
Which is a huge leap.
Right, but for those of us who don't design microchips for a living, what are the actual mechanics of that? Like, why is FP4 the metric that matters here?
Well, it comes down to how artificial intelligence actually does math, right? So an exaflop is a billion operations per second.
Okay, so it's purely a speed metric.
Exactly. But the FP4 part, that's the secret sauce. FP4 stands for 4-bit floating point. Look at it this way. When a bank calculates your interest rate, it needs extreme precision. Decimals carried out to the 10th degree.
Right, you don't want the bank guessing your balance.
Exactly. But AI training just doesn't need that. AI operates on pattern recognition and probabilistic weights, so FP4 is a much lower precision data format.
Okay, I see.
By stripping the math down to the absolute bare minimum precision required, you can shove exponentially more data through the silicon pipelines blisteringly fast without losing the specific kind of accuracy an AI actually needs to get smarter.
Okay, so it's kind of the difference between moving a mountain with a million little teaspoons versus using a fleet of massive bulldozers. You sacrifice granular precision for just overwhelming brute force speed.
That's exactly it. And Anthropic desperately needs that speed right now. I mean, their run rate revenue has absolutely exploded. The Digest notes they ended 2025 at about $9 billion.
And now?
Now, they are over $30 billion.
Wow.
Yeah, that kind of hyper-growth places a severe physical strain on infrastructure. During peak hours, their existing server architecture was practically melting.
It just couldn't handle the traffic, which really redefines the competitive landscape, doesn't it? Because for the past few years, the bottleneck for AI was always NVIDIA.
Always. If you wanted to build frontier models, you had to wait in line for NVIDIA GPUs.
Right, but by anchoring to AWS and their custom Trainium chips, Anthropic is just bypassing that bottleneck entirely.
Completely bypassing it. They are building an infrastructure roadmap that directly mirrors OpenAI's ambitions. Specifically, OpenAI's strategy of utilizing custom silicon providers like Cerebra's to reduce their own dependency on the traditional GPU supply chains.
Which brings us to the geopolitical and corporate drama layered over all of this. Because this 5 gigawatt announcement, it didn't just happen in a vacuum. It was a direct, very pointed response to OpenAI.
Oh, absolutely. The timing is no coincidence.
Right. Just a few days prior to this, OpenAI's chief revenue officer, Denise Dresser, had this Sunday memo leak. And in it, she explicitly called Anthropic's compute strategy a strategic misstep, basically suggesting they were falling behind on hardware.
And it is just a phenomenal corporate backfire.
Oh, completely.
I mean, OpenAI taunts their biggest rival about a compute disadvantage, and almost immediately Anthropic just drops a 5 gigawatt, $100 billion hammer on the table.
Just a massive flex.
Yeah, the revenue recognition war we've been watching, it just leaped from software capability to physical supremacy. They are fighting over data center blueprints and regional power grids now.
Okay, so Anthropic is funding its 5 gigawatt future through this massive enterprise synergy with AWS. They are tying their fate to enterprise cloud dominance.
Right.
But that leaves OpenAI in a very different position. Because building your own physical infrastructure, buying land, securing power, ordering custom chips from companies like Cerebra's that requires an ocean of liquid capital.
A literal ocean of cash.
Yeah. And OpenAI is choosing a completely different economic engine to pay those bills. They are turning the AI itself into an advertising engine.
Yeah, they are shifting the entire core monetization strategy of ChatGPT.
Which is wild. OpenAI has confirmed they've enabled cost per click, or CPC advertising, directly inside the ChatGPT interface. And advertisers are bidding like $3 to $5 per click.
And they're dropping their minimum ad spend requirements too, right? From $200,000 all the way down to $50,000.
Yeah, to flood the platform with smaller businesses. They're even hiring an advertising marketing science leader.
And what's fascinating here is the mechanical shift from their previous attempts at monetization, because they initially tried a cost per mil, or CPM model.
Which is paying for impressions.
Exactly. Charging about $60 for every 1,000 times an ad was merely shown alongside a chat response. But advertisers quickly realized that just having a banner sit next to an AI's output wasn't driving any measurable sales.
It wasn't converting.
Right, so the value of those impressions plummeted to about $25. So by shifting to CPC pricing, OpenAI is directly attacking the performance marketing budgets of Google Search and Meta. Advertisers are now paying strictly for actual user action.
Wait, I have to step in here, because if OpenAI puts $5 CPC ads inside ChatGPT, doesn't that immediately and fundamentally destroy the core product?
Well, that's the big debate right now.
Like, let's use a real-world scenario. If I ask ChatGPT to analyze the market and recommend the best customer relationship management software for my small business, and Salesforce just paid $5 to be the top outcome, ChatGPT is no longer an objective oracle.
No, it's not.
It's just a commissioned salesperson at that point. It's basically Google search wrapped in a chat UI.
And the tension you are describing is the exact existential crisis playing out inside their engineering teams right now. Because when you hire an advertising marketing science leader, their actual job is to physically alter the mechanics of the neural network.
What do you mean by physically alter?
They have to build algorithms that weight an advertiser's presence inside the AI's vector database. It means the model dynamically adjusts its token generation to naturally steer the conversation toward the entity paying that $5 click fee.
Wow.
And it has to do it without making it sound like a canned pitch.
So it subtly manipulates the latent space of the AI's understanding to favor the highest bidder. I mean, that is a massive paradigm shift for anyone using AI for serious research or productivity.
It changes the whole dynamic.
You're suddenly navigating a landscape where the intelligence is economically incentivized to lead you to a specific checkout cart. And the financial forecasts in the digest show they are fully committed to this path.
Oh, they're all in.
OpenAI projects $2.4 billion in ad revenue just this year in 2026, $11 billion by next year. And they expect ads to make up 36% of their total revenue by 2030.
Though it's worth noting, early click-through rates in ChatGPT are actually tracking below Google search benchmarks right now.
Really?
Yeah, so it is a highly risky maneuver. But the stark contrast in industry strategies is incredible to watch. OpenAI is actively embracing this intent mining ad model to survive the compute arms race,
Right.
while Anthropic is quietly handing themselves a massive competitive advantage among enterprise users by maintaining a deliberate ad-free environment.
Okay, so OpenAI is funding their infrastructure by mining your intent for digital marketers. Anthropic took a completely different route to pay their bills AWS, which means they don't need to inject ads into your workflow.
Right, you get a clean interface.
But ironically, that does not mean your data is safe with them. In fact, Anthropic is asking for vastly more personal information, just for a completely different and arguably more intimidating reason, national security.
Yeah, this is the transition from a consumer application straight into a guarded utility.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Anthropic is requiring government-issued photo IDs and live camera selfies for select Claude users just to access specific high-level features.
And they are outsourcing this process, right?
Yeah, to a San Francisco-based company called Persona Identities. It takes about 5 minutes, and they claim the data won't be used for AI training. Although the exact timeframes for how long they retain your biometric data remain completely undisclosed.
Which is a huge red flag for privacy advocates. And crucially, the digest explicitly notes that Chinese national ID cards are not accepted by the Persona system.
Right, completely banned.
So if you are a Chinese user trying to access Claude and you don't possess an international passport, you are hard locked out of the system.
And the community backlash has been volcanic, because Claude was universally championed as the privacy-respecting alternative to the data-hungry models at OpenAI and Google. And Anthropic handled this rollout terribly.
Oh, it was a PR disaster.
There was no press release explaining the decision, no blog post, just a quietly updated Help Center page that users stumbled upon when their prompts were suddenly blocked by an ID verification screen.
Yeah, you absolutely cannot execute a massive pivot in user privacy silently and hope the internet just ignores it. But this raises an important question.
Okay, what's that?
What is the underlying mechanical reality forcing Anthropic to alienate its most loyal, privacy-conscious users? We have to look at the capabilities of the machine itself.
And the digest points directly to the Project Glasswing story and the OpenBSD vulnerability to explain this.
Sure.
For you listening, let's break down exactly what that means, because it honestly sounds like a spy thriller.
It really does. So Anthropic has developed what the industry widely acknowledges as the most capable cybersecurity AI in existence. Recently, this model autonomously, and I mean without any human step-by-step guidance, discovered a 27-year-old zero-day vulnerability in OpenBSD.
Okay, let's pause.
No.
A 0-day is a flaw in software that the developers have 0 days to fix, right?
Yeah.
Because hackers can already exploit it. And OpenBSD isn't just some random app on your phone.
Yeah.
It's the foundational operating system known for extreme security that powers critical internet infrastructure globally.
Precisely. This code has been scrutinized by the absolute best human security researchers on the planet since the late 1990s, and they all missed the flaw, but Claude found it.
Wow.
So if a machine has the architectural capacity to autonomously unearth foundational cracks in the global internet, you are no longer operating a fun chatbot.
No, you're operating a weapon.
Exactly. You are operating a dual-use weapon. The rationale for the ID requirement is preventing access from U.S. adversary nations, specifically limiting the attack surfaces available to actors in China, Russia, and North Korea.
Right, because if the model can autonomously hack server infrastructure, knowing the verified identity of the person sitting behind the keyboard is a highly defensible national security posture.
It is deeply defensible on a geopolitical level. But the cost at the consumer level is severe. When you force a researcher or a developer to hand over a government ID to a third-party biometric vendor with opaque data retention policies, you fracture trust.
Yeah, you really do.
You are telling the user that the tool has grown too dangerous for anonymity.
It's a brutal reality check.
Yeah.
The intelligence is just too potent to be open anymore. Now, while Anthropic and OpenAI are dominating these massive infrastructure and security headlines, the rest of the industry is slamming into their own walls.
Yeah, every major player is hitting some kind of ceiling right now, whether it's physical, legal, or economic.
Right, so let's do a rapid-fire look at the remaining items in today's digest because they all highlight the various bottlenecks of progress happening globally. Let's start with the cyber bottleneck we were just talking about. The NSA is reportedly, quietly, using Anthropic's restricted cybersecurity AI.
And while there's no official confirmation of that, it perfectly contextualizes the ID verification rollout. If the National Security Agency is utilizing the architecture for defensive or offensive cyber operations, a lockdown consumer perimeter is practically a prerequisite.
Completely. Okay, moving to the legal bottleneck.
Yeah.
The foundational structures of AI development are heading to court. The jury selection for the Musk versus OpenAI trial is just 6 days away.
Yeah, and legal analysts in the digest are giving it a 50 to 60% chance of a settlement. But they note the Brockman diary makes the terms incredibly complicated.
Because it's hard evidence.
Right. The diary introduces a tangible historical record into a debate about intent. This trial is going to legally test the boundaries of open source ideals versus closed source corporate profits. It could potentially rewrite how future AI labs are even allowed to incorporate and attract investment.
Huge implications there. Then there is the hardware bottleneck overseas. The global race is actively stalling in certain sectors. DeepSeek V4 is facing significant delays. And the digest points specifically to Huawei Ascend 950 PR kernel optimization issues.
And this is just a masterclass in the realities of silicon geopolitics. Due to U.S. export controls, international competitors like DeepSeek cannot simply buy NVIDIA's latest chips. They have to rely on domestic hardware like Huawei's Ascend line.
Which sounds fine in theory, but
having the chip just isn't enough. Kernel optimization is the highly complex, lowest-level software engineering required to make the AI models actually talk to the silicon efficiently. If you can't optimize that communication layer, your multi-billion-dollar compute cluster just sits there idling.
So software magic is entirely bound by hardware realities. Speaking of hardware realities, Alibaba seems to be trying to break out of the digital box entirely. They are hosting a Hello World event tomorrow for Qwen.
Yeah, and Weibo speculation is heavily pointing toward embodied AI rather than just a standard text model release. They've already had the Qwen 3.6 Max preview live since Monday.
Embodied AI. That's robotics.
Exactly. It means taking the intelligence out of a browser and placing it into physical machines or interactive 3D spatial environments. It's the AI learning to navigate gravity, physics, and spatial reasoning.
Wow.
If Alibaba successfully ships embodied AI products tomorrow, it forces that physical bottleneck wide open and puts immense pressure on Western labs to commercialize their own robotics divisions immediately.
Okay, and finally, we hit the economic bottleneck for developers. GitHub Copilot Opus 4.7 is rolling out, and it carries a massive 7.5x premium multiplier on pricing through April 30th.
Which really demonstrates the inelasticity of demand for truly capable coding assistants. For highly specialized, revenue-generating tasks like software engineering, companies are willing to pay astronomical premiums if the AI can measurably reduce development cycles.
Why don't you just pays for itself?
Okay, with all these moving pieces, what stands out to you? I think it's the unbroken chain of causality here. The compute arms race necessitates the monetization pivot, and the resulting terrifying capability forces the security lockdown.
Right. So what does this all mean for you listening? Let's bring this massive landscape into focus. Today's deep dive into the tech-reader AI digest shows an ecosystem that has entirely shed its experimental skin. We traveled from Anthropic, pulling 5 gigawatts of physical power off the grid just to satisfy the sheer thermodynamic cost of intelligence,
to OpenAI actively rewriting neural network weights to steer your prompts toward $5 ad clicks just to pay for their own servers.
Exactly. And we end with the stark reality of holding up a passport to a webcam just to interact with a model, because that model is now capable of pulling apart the infrastructure of the internet autonomously.
It fundamentally changes your relationship with the machine.
It really does. AI is no longer a toy you play with. It is the next global utility. It is a highly optimized advertising engine. And it is an actively guarded frontier of national security. How you interact with these systems, what data you surrender to them, and whose economic incentives are shaping their answers to your questions. Well, it requires a totally new level of user literacy.
The whole trajectory just points towards centralization and heavy control.
Exactly. Which leads to a fascinating thought about where we go from here. Because as these frontier models become impossibly expensive to run and heavily guarded by biometric security and inextricably tied to the intent mining of global ad exchanges, it makes you wonder about the definition of digital freedom in the coming decade.
Yeah, what does that even look like?
Right. Will the ultimate luxury in the future be an artificial intelligence that isn't connected to a 5-gigawatt grid? Like a fully localized private intelligence sitting quietly on your own hardware, totally disconnected from the ad networks and the watch lists. A machine that works solely for you.
That's a really compelling thought.
Something to mull over as you close out your day. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.